My favorite part-time job, like before I was, a real professional, a big boy, I worked in a daycare in college, and I was the lead teacher in the 18 to 24 month room. It was the best thing ever. Like, I mean, you imagine sales, like people being like, "Oh, thank you, you did such a great job," blah blah blah. But imagine like walking into a room every single day, and you just have a flock of kids run up to you like you were the coolest person ever, like, ah! And then you don't have to do like all the real crazy things like feed them and put them to bed at night and stuff like that. You do it for 8 hours and you get to go home. But yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I do actually think that experience paid off big time. In my sales career, just being able to look at things from a different perspective, having patience, being able to put things in a language that other people can understand. Like, obviously you don't talk to people like a toddler, but trying to step back and figure out, okay, how can I communicate this thing that they might not have the same knowledge on that I do. So
I think Albert Einstein probably said this, but basically if you can't explain what you do or what you're selling or anything in language that a 5-year-old would understand, then you really don't know it well enough yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it is interesting because I know when I first got into sales, and I think a lot of veteran sales reps struggle with that, especially if you move industries or anything else, because we are so like we're coached to talk about how great this thing is, which then leads to like specs and features and everything. And no one loves a product dump or feature dump or anything like that, but that's automatically where your mind goes. And so it's like when you think about, or at least when I think about how I'm trying to communicate, it's like, okay, the specs and stuff, those are cool. We can get into that if you want to. This is what it means for you. This is the outcomes that it can actually do for you, right? Which talking about, kids in a daycare and like trying to teach them like, okay, if you do this, you're going to get this. If you do this, you're going to get this. One of them you like, one of them you don't, right? So I think being able to back out and take 7 steps and turn it into 1 or 2 is definitely a skill that a lot of salespeople lack, but it can pay off big time.
Right. Yeah. And do you find that you connect with a lot of your customers on LinkedIn so they can see that side of you,
Yeah.
or do you keep it separate?
I try to connect with every single one. Like when I look at LinkedIn, which, I've obviously, I approach LinkedIn a lot differently than a lot of other people, especially a lot of other salespeople. But I think the average sales pro and even the sales leader and going out further organization, they do not see the actual value of LinkedIn. They see it as like, we have this big, email list. Oh, great. We have all these LinkedIn contacts and they want to do the same thing. And it's just totally different because LinkedIn is a platform where, yes, you can share all about your company and the great things you do and the great things you sell, but that's not why people go there. Like the way I look at least my approach on LinkedIn, it is much more of an inbound approach where, yes, I'm trying to connect with every single person I'm calling on and probably the 10 people that sit around them too.
Right.
But outside of that, I'm not hitting my message and saying, hey, buy this thing from me right now. Like I may post, I do post quite a bit about what I do, but it's not in a way where it's like, buy this thing from me. It's, hey, here's something to think about, with XYZ, buying network equipment, or if you're upgrading your phone system or whatever. So stuff that people may find valuable, maybe they don't. And again, they can scroll by. They don't have to give attention to it. But that's the stuff where it's almost a timing thing. You show up consistently enough and you provide enough value, at some point, one of those messages is going to hit at the right time and someone's going to be like, gosh, I'm dealing with that thing right now. Seth, let's have a conversation, right? So it's just different, but that only comes with consistency. That only comes with showing up every single day or however often you're posting and engaging with other people, proactively interacting with your network, not waiting for other people just to hit you. Like when I first started doing videos, it was always one of those things where you just kind of felt weird, just being like, hi, and so I was like, okay, let's like find a way to grab attention. I did a few other things, and then eventually enough people, like I had done the head bob thing a couple of times, and enough people like said something once or twice where I was like, all right, it's gonna be like my shtick, right? Which I do think actually I know some people have like totally written me off because of it, but at the same time, I've had people tell me like, at first I thought you were just a nut, and then you started showing up on my screen like every day doing it, and I was like, okay, this dude's honest. But I usually do at least a text post every single day, and I'll shoot at least 2 videos, sometimes 3 videos a week, and for a couple of reasons. So the videos, they don't get nearly as much reach as the text posts do. The text posts will get pushed out to a lot more people, which makes sense. Like LinkedIn's trying to encourage people to be active, and it's much easier to consume a text post because you don't need volume. You can skim through it. And to kind of figure it out, they went really hard on the video for a while and like super pushed it out. And then it got very noisy and polluted on there with a lot of garbage video, frankly. And so they kind of reeled that back in. And then all of a sudden, text only posts started getting a ton of reach, and video wasn't getting nearly as much. So that's when I started saying, okay, I'm going to do text posts every single day or put more effort towards that. So I definitely put out more text posts, pretty much because they get more reach, and I know it's going to show up in people's feeds more often. But I will say usually video has a much better engagement rate if you're looking at the number of views or impressions versus the number of people that like it or comment it or anything else. And I will say, I think the stuff that I find most useful and that actually drives conversations with people that can turn into like money and revenue for my company is usually the video too. So I think this is really important. And I think it's something that a lot of salespeople miss because they want to sit there and they want to make excuses as to why they cannot create their own content, right? Why marketing has to do it. And it's always like, well, I don't have time, or I don't know how, or what would I even talk about? Or there's all sorts of excuses where your goal in sales and with the content you create, your goal with the content is no different than what your goal should be on the phone or anything else, right? Like you are going to use this content to move prospects through your funnel or to open up conversations that were not happening before. Like in my mind, when I'm a sales pro, I need to talk about what my buyers want to talk about, not the 5,000 other sales pros that are on LinkedIn want to talk about. Some of that's okay, but when it's all here and none here, like you don't get paid for the amount of connections you have. Like you don't get paid for how many likes you have. You don't get paid for how many views you have. You get paid for selling stuff. And so the point we were making earlier about how LinkedIn's different than other platforms, people have monetized platforms like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram because they can become influencers and represent brands or teach people how to do things on there. Where LinkedIn is full of professionals that are already getting paid to do a thing, right? They didn't come here to learn how to be an influencer on LinkedIn. So the way that you monetize LinkedIn is by using it to help you sell more of whatever you actually do and make money. So that's what makes it, I think, dramatically different from other social media platforms. People have a lot of thoughts and they have a lot of ideas, but they don't act on them. And so number one, like what I'll say is you have to default to action. Like take action. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Don't wait for the right time. Like don't let that be an excuse. You need to go do. And then what I'll say, and like I actually have this tattooed on me, is like never fear failure. Because when you start being scared to mess up and scared to fail, like number one, that's what keeps you from taking action, right? As people are like, I don't want to look silly. Like, I don't want other people to talk about it. I don't want to feel like I failed. But like, there's all sorts of reasons. I get it. It's scary. But when you stop looking at failure as this thing to be really scared of and something to avoid and everything else, like you will start seeing so many more doors open up. Like things just become possible all of a sudden because that thing you weren't going to do because you have a million excuses, and really at its core, you're scared to fail, you're scared to look dumb, you're scared to whatever, like that's off the table. And so if you want to do it, you're going to go do it. And then what I'll say about that as well is you will become much more particular and intentional about the things you pour your energy into. Because when you start saying, if I want to do that thing, I'm going to go do it, like you only have so much time in the day. So like all of a sudden, the things that you're doing are very important to you, and you stop dipping your hands in 50 things and dip your hands in 5 things, and you get to know those really well. So yeah, I would say default to action, and don't fear failure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is great.